This April, the 21st, marks 10 years since the death of Prince in his home at Paisley Park in Minnesota. An autopsy and subsequent investigation by the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office concluded that Prince died of an accidental overdose of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid significantly more potent than heroin. The investigation concluded that Prince reportedly thought he was taking Vicodin, but the pills were actually counterfeit and laced with fentanyl. And long-term associates, including Sheila E., noted that Prince suffered from chronic hip and knee pain due to the years of physically demanding performances in high-heel shoes. Now picture the same man, 20 years later, standing on a stranger's doorstep in suburban Minneapolis on a Sunday morning, Bible in hand, introducing himself as Brother Nelson, asking if he can talk to them about Jehovah. Multiple people opened their front door and found Prince Rogers Nelson standing there, ready to preach. And on October the 5th, 2003, a couple in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, opened their door at 2 p.m. to find Prince standing on their doorstep with the Bible in hand. They were Jewish. Prince became a Jehovah's Witness in 2001. He worshipped at a Kingdom Hall in a Minneapolis suburb for more than a decade. He went door to door. He shared his faith at small gatherings after concerts. He refused to perform some of his most famous songs because the lyrics conflicted with his new beliefs. He turned down a reunion with the bandmates who helped him make him famous because one of them was gay. And there were serious questions that have never been fully answered about whether the Watchtower's blood doctrine played a role in his death. To understand how Prince became a Jehovah's Witness, you have to start with Larry Graham. Now, Larry Graham is the bassist best known for his work with Sly and the Family Stone and for founding Graham Central Station. He became one of Jehovah's Witnesses in 1975. The two met at a show in Nashville in the mid-1990s. Prince had grown up listening to Graham Central Station, and he invited Graham into his next tour.
Well, basically, he was, talking about his tour and discussing some of the shows and showing me his guitar, his new guitar. He didn't, he looked pretty normal. Well, he was a very private person, and I know that there's already reports on the news about medication issues, but I've never seen him take anything. On that tour, he also, following my career, knew that I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses back in 1975. So he had, he's always been interested in the Bible and what the Bible has to say and teach. And you could hear the effect in the change of his choice of lyrics. You could hear a difference that became obvious to everyone. Oh, that's different, and a change in a lot of things that he would choose to maybe do in a show before. Well, those things were just were different, and a lot of people noticed that he was a lot happier. I know a lot of people felt they had a great loss, a great void there, and some people maybe like, I hope this is a dream. I hope I wake up tomorrow and this didn't really happen.
And Graham, who had converted to the Witnesses in 1975, became Prince's de facto instructor in the religion. Graham said Prince was deeply interested in the Bible and they would talk about it for hours. Prince was a man who had never stopped being spiritually restless. He had been raised in a household where his mother was Baptist and his father was a Seventh-day Adventist. And Prince's interest in the Bible grew, and eventually he came to the conclusion that he too wanted to become a Jehovah's Witness. He later began worshiping at a Kingdom Hall just outside of Minneapolis. In 2001, Prince became a Jehovah's Witness after a period of spiritual searching. He was known in his congregation as Brother Nelson. He spent his Sundays inside the Kingdom Hall in Minneapolis, and he was, by all congregational accounts, a model member, humble, committed, present. But here's where the story gets a bit complicated, because Prince was not a simple man, and the Watchtower's doctrine was not a comfortable fit for everything he was. Let's start with sexuality. The Watchtower's position on sexuality is conservative in the extreme, and the kind of lyrical content that made Prince famous is exactly what the organization would describe as spiritually dangerous. In his late career, Prince would refuse to sing racy songs. He drew a line, but it was not always a clear one. He was never able or willing to fully separate himself from that dimension of his artistry. The Watchtower's teachings pulled in one direction, and his creative identity pulled in another. And he spent the last 15 years of his life navigating that tension in public without ever fully resolving it. Then there is homosexuality. And this is the part of the story that deserves to be said plainly. Wendy Malvoin and Lisa Coleman were childhood friends, lovers, and founding members of Prince's Revolution band. And when the pair tried to put together a Revolution tour in 2000, they were hopeful their former band leader would say yes. He didn't. Malvoyan said he declined because of her homosexuality and the fact she was half Jewish. She was told he wanted her to give a press conference denouncing her homosexuality and announcing that she was converting to Jehovah. He wanted Wendy, a woman who helped build his legacy, who played on Purple Rain, who was part of the musical family that made him who he was, to publicly denounce her own sexuality before he would work with her again. That is Watchtower Doctrine talking through Prince. The organization's position on homosexuality is absolute. It is real and well documented. However, 6 years later, she stood beside Prince on stage in London, playing Purple Rain for millions of viewers at an awards show. They were in matching white suits, so he came back. The relationship survived. Prince's spirituality was nuanced and, at times, controversial. His ex-wife, Maite Garcia, described him as a lifelong spiritual seeker, fascinated by the integration of various beliefs, including astrology, the third eye, and reincarnation, into his Christian faith. He was a man too large and too complex for any single framework to fully contain, and the Watchtower's framework is not designed for complexity. It is designed for compliance. And now we get to the part of the story that I think has never been discussed as seriously as it deserves to be. In the years before his death, there were consistent reports that Prince was suffering from severe hip problems. He had been using a cane since the early 1990s, and that part is established. But by the mid-2000s, multiple sources were reporting that he needed a double hip replacement, the surgery that could have resolved his pain. He was widely reported to have needed a double hip replacement before his passing, a procedure he allegedly declined because it could have required a blood transfusion. And The Guardian reported it as follows: will Prince be forced to choose between his faith and his health? Persistent hip problems are affecting the Purple One's mobility, according to reports, and his religious beliefs are preventing surgery. As a Jehovah's Witness, Prince has allegedly refused blood transfusions, making a double hip replacement operation impossible. He's in a lot of pain, a source told the Hollywood Report's Showbiz 411 blog this week. Prince is popping painkillers and hoping it will all go away. Prince's hip problems were first reported in 2005, and in 2007 and 2008, rumors emerged of secret surgery but there is no sign that the singer has gone under the knife. Larry Graham, after Prince's death, pushed back on the idea that the blood doctrine prevented the surgery. Graham denied claims that Prince couldn't have surgery because his faith prohibited blood transfusions, saying that while Jehovah's Witnesses cannot get blood transfusions, medical technology offers alternatives. He noted that there was a national network of hospital liaison committees who help members at major hospitals receive optimal care without transfusions. And that is accurate as far as it goes. The Watchtower does maintain a hospital liaison committee network specifically to help members navigate surgery without blood transfusions. And blood for surgery is a real and growing field of medicine. But here's what is also true. Hip replacement surgery, particularly double hip replacement surgery, can involve significant blood loss. Not every patient needs a transfusion, but for a patient whose surgeons determined one might be necessary, a JW who has signed a card refusing all blood products would either need to find a specialist willing to perform the procedure without that option available or decline the surgery entirely. The National Library of Medicine states this: under the question, blood transfusion in elective total hip arthroplasty, can patient-specific parameters predict transfusion? Primary total hip arthroplasty is often associated with the substantial blood loss. High blood loss can lead to perioperative and postoperative anemia. This may result in the need for allogenic blood transfusion. Blood transfusion is associated with specific risks, such as the transfusion of infectious diseases, but also severe systemic side effects, such as transfusion-related acute lung injury and increased risk of periprosthetic joint infection. Furthermore, blood transfusion is associated with increased morbidity and mortality. Blood loss during THA has been reported in the literature to range from 700 milliliters to 1,500 milliliters. And before the introduction of blood-sparing measures and the implementation of patient blood management protocols, THA was associated with a high risk of transfusion, with transfusion rates ranging from 15% to 69%. As a result, patient-specific packed red blood cells were routinely stocked for allogenic blood transfusion. However, in recent years, the implementation of new surgical techniques and patient blood management protocols, optimization, as well as the introduction of new transfusion guidelines, have significantly reduced transfusion rates in THA. Prince died on April the 21st, 2016, from an accidental fentanyl overdose. He was 57 years old. The Vicodin, which was laced with fentanyl, was being used to manage pain. And could that pain have been surgically resolved if the blood doctrine had not been a factor in his medical decision-making? We cannot answer that with certainty. And I want to be clear that I'm not claiming the Watchtower caused the death of Prince. What I am saying is this: a man was in serious physical pain for years. A surgical solution was available. Reports at the time suggested he declined it for religious reasons tied to his faith as a Jehovah's Witness. He managed that pain with opioids. He died of a fentanyl overdose. Those are the facts. The line between them is not a straight one, but it is not invisible either. And the Watchtower's blood doctrine affects every member of the organization at every stage of their life, including a famous musician in the world sitting alone in a Minneapolis suburb with posted notes in his Bible. Prince's story is unlike any other celebrity JW story because he was not raised in the faith. He was not a childhood convert. He was an adult, a fully formed, globally famous, artistically sovereign adult who chose this. And that choice is instructive because it shows you something the Watchtower rarely advertises about how it recruits. It does not only come for the vulnerable and the young. It comes for the searching. It comes for the grieving. It comes for the successful person who has everything in the world, says you should want, money, fame, creative freedom, and who still lies awake at night wondering what any of this means. Prince had lost a son. His child, boy Gregory, was born in 1996 and died within a week from a rare skull condition. He had been through 2 marriages. He had spent a decade in a brutal legal battle with a record label over ownership of his own music. He had changed his name to a symbol in protest. By all accounts, he was not a broken man, but he was a searching one. And the Watchtower found him at exactly that moment. The same way they find millions of ordinary people at kitchen tables around the world. They had answers, and the answers felt true. Prince adopted and accepted all of it, sincerely apparently, joyfully for 15 years. And I want to end this episode by saying something clearly. Prince might have been a remarkable human being. His artistry, his discipline, his sheer musical genius. None of that is diminished by anything we have discussed here today. His faith was real. His happiness inside the congregation was, by every account from people who knew him, genuine. Larry Grain's description of him as someone who could stay up all night talking about the Bible. I believe that. That sounds like Prince, but real happiness inside an organization and the organization itself being above scrutiny are 2 different things. You can hold both. You can honor who Prince was as a person and still ask hard questions about the institution that shaped the last 15 years of his life. Prince could navigate the contradictions because he was Prince. Most of the people in those kingdom orbs cannot. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this.